Hello!
Hello everyone, welcome to the second live stream event of this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. Glad you can join us today, either in real time or if you're watching the recording after the fact. We'll start by doing the introductions again. I'm guessing 4 weeks in you'll definitely know who I am by now. Graeme McPhee, I'm the lead educator on the course based here at the University of Strathclyde.
My name is John Paul Fitzpatrick. I am an honorary research fellow here at the university as well.
Okay, so again, as was the case 2 weeks ago, we've got lots to talk about over the next 40 minutes or so. We've pulled out questions, comments, talking points, and probably there's been kind of quite a few over the last couple of weeks.
It's been lively. It's been great to see everyone's contributions and range of opinions and differences in opinions. It's been fascinating reading through the forums. So keep up that level of engagement. It's amazing. It's brilliant.
So I guess we've got a couple of themes that we kind of want to try and work through in the session today. In week 4, we were talking about love and the role of love within the care system and some of the challenges that there can be in terms of providing love and talking about love. So we've got various things to talk about there. Linked into that, the learners had the chance to listen to Jenny Malloy this weekend, as always the case, the kind of big response to that in terms of different things that people were saying. So we'll pick up on some bits about that. We've also got, I guess, we'll be talking specifically about residential childcare and kind of some of the discussions that have come up in the forums there and the role that residential childcare can or can't play within the system and some thoughts backwards and forwards about that. And then just some other bits about kind of some different points and comments that learners have made.
Sounds brilliant. Let's dive in. And before we do, I'm just going to put you in the spot, but the concept of love in terms of caring for vulnerable children and young people, where do you stand on what's been a really interesting and divisive issue, but where do you stand?
Yeah. So kind of simply speaking, I think I'm really glad that in Scotland, so I guess should make clear I'm answering this question from a Scottish context, and I guess it's interesting then just to say that I'm back from a Child and Youth Care conference in Canada last week where this issue was being spoken about there, and it was interesting, a sense amongst a number of the Canadians that I was speaking to that we're further ahead than them in terms of kind of thinking about this and how and why I think we're further ahead in this. And that I think there's undeniably over the last period of time there was a shift away from being able even to use the word love, and a lot of that being tied up in notions of what professional boundaries should look like, and a lot of it tied up in issues of abuse, and I think actually confusing the notion of good care and love and abuse and such, and love came in some ways to equate to it will lead to abuse, as opposed to love being us wanting the best possible care that somebody.
Absolutely. So would your sense be then, from the debate that you've had in Canada, from looking through everyone's contributions on the course, that there's almost a sense of the term being reclaimed in a positive way to reinstate love and concepts of good care, good attachment, at the heart of positive care?
Yes. So, within Scotland just now, I guess some of our participants will be aware of this already. We've got a national review of our care system going on, and just this week, the person leading it up, Fiona Duncan, who's a care experienced adult, was talking about one of her hopes and aspirations for the outcomes of this national review of care is to put love back at the centre of the care system. And actually, when we're using that language to put it back at the centre, what that's actually demonstrating is it had moved away, or it had become absent. And I think when thinking about what Jenny was talking about this week in terms of her reflecting back on her experiences of being a young person within the care system, and that sense of knowing when somebody really had your back, really cared for you, would do absolutely anything in order to try and give you the best possible care possible, and feeling loved and cared for because of that, as opposed to when we experience other forms of care which don't actually feel that loving or caring or claiming at all. And there's a whole variety of factors that have led the care system to perhaps move away from that. And I think certainly in Scotland, there's more of a conversation happening about how do we reclaim that territory, how do we reclaim that language. And I think that even that's a big issue. Some people don't feel comfortable with using the word love in the context of or job or work and working in the care system.
In terms of the kind of professionalisation of love, what does love mean? What does the actual construct mean? And there's obviously a kind of sociologically constructed term that has different kind of connotations, different interpretations. So all of that said, what's caught your eye over the last couple of weeks in terms of some of the comments that this debate's provoking?
Yeah. So the very first comment I'd highlighted, and actually got a couple of comments from this person, so Laura S. So Laura, I've seen your comments across a number of forums this week, and Laura had actually asked the question for the live stream event, just how embedded is having love, the importance of relationships at the core of childcare practice? Are we moving away from procedural-led approaches to social work? And like is always the case, Laura, me and John Paul can sit and answer this, and we're given our own perspective in a sense, and it's recognising that there will be different perspectives. I think things are moving back in the correct direction, and I think that there is far more attention being paid to relationships, to the notion of kind of relational work, and certainly in terms of thinking about working with children and young people, and recognising that actually the relationship in many cases is the work. It's about being in relationship with children and young people, and about the care that young people can experience via that being in relationships. So I think having love, the importance of relationships, I by no means are we there, and maybe it's actually one of those things that we'll be continually working at and continue have to keep on the agenda.
Keep it under review, and Graham, I'm going to steal the line that you would always use, but we're truly a global cohort on this programme just now. So much, I suppose, will depend on the particular whatever country you're in, whatever particular procedures you are. It will vary from house to house, place to place, organisation to organisation. So that will be probably quite inconsistent depending on where you are in the globe and what policies and procedures and practice culture is operating wherever you are.
Yeah, and I think that Laura uses the phrase in her question there, procedural-led approaches to social work. I don't think it's actually just social work that's suffered from that. I think kind of almost every aspect of practice that involves children and young people has been subject to pressures there, becoming procedural-led, and linking it back to the conversations we've seen taking place in Canada last week. And again, it's how do we reclaim some of that territory? Because when we become procedure-based, then we care, well, I guess there's the potential that we cease to view young people as individuals, and they just become part of a system, and the procedures can happen to them, as opposed to recognising that about trying to work with people on an individual relational basis. Because I mean, the simple answer to your question, John Paul, for me would be I would hate to think that any young person who's part of our care system, especially for any length of time, at the end of it feels that they weren't truly cared for or they weren't truly loved. Because if the whole basis of young people being part of the care system is that we're trying to make things better for them in some way, I don't see how bringing them into a system whereby they don't feel cared for, they don't feel claimed, they don't feel loved, and yes, I know that we've got to have appropriate boundaries and we've got to have appropriate safety and checks and measures, but that can't get in the way of stopping people feeling cared for and loved.
I mean, from what I'm hearing you say, it's almost an appeal for strong relational practice where people's relationships are at the heart of, and then being at the heart of decision making and involved in their care, and to know that there's an adult who cares for them unconditionally in terms of giving them that regard, being there for them consistently, regardless of what policies, procedures, or the other bits of bureaucracy that are tied to social care say.
Absolutely, and there's so many connections, especially across this week's material. Lots of people picked up on the Urie Bronfenbrenner quote, every child needs at least one, or everybody needs at least one person that's kind of crazy about them, sort of thing, and about kind of that recognising that need. So I think absolutely, yeah, that we've got to keep this conversation going. It feels like there's, and again, I'm aware I'm speaking in a Scottish context, and you're kind of quite right, and we're asking all our learners to think about how does this play out in your jurisdiction, sort of thing. And as I said, I was getting feedback last week that it's good that we're having this conversation in Scotland, but it's not necessarily the same
across the world,
everywhere. And so the second comment from Laura that I picked up on, and she was talking about, she'd enjoyed the week of the course, but she said the importance of building relationships with children, working alongside them and moving away from procedural childcare practice are all the messages that young people in care say that they need. And the bit that jumps out at me there is us actually listening to children and young people. We're not having this conversation in Scotland because we've just plucked this idea out of the sky. That this is what children care experienced children and young people are telling us. They want a care system that truly claims them, cares for them, and loves them, makes them feel safe, makes them feel wanted, and with everything that goes with that. And that's what we're striving for.
And the bit that Laura goes on to say that's really interesting there is the point about trust, because I suppose many of our children and young people who are vulnerable have in some way maybe been let down by a kind of a breakdown in family relationships, their ability to form positive attachments in relationships, trusting relationships with adults. I mean, you were talking about your experience of residential childcare. You will have undoubtedly came across children who really struggled to initially build up that kind of trust, because they would expect you to be one of a line of people that would parachute out of their lives when they least needed it.
And we know that many of the children and young people that end up in residential childcare, many young people that end up in foster care also, that they can have a number of kind of, we would often talk about failed placements and placements that hadn't ended in a positive way. And for a number of the young people, the way they protect himself against that hurt is kind of keeping a distance, and that's a completely understandable and logical response, and I guess it demonstrates that there's an even more challenging, difficult task for workers and for foster carers in terms of kind of helping young people to trust in adult relationships again, in terms of what we're not going to let you down, we're going to be there, we're not going to reject you, and it doesn't matter what happens, and we're going to stick with you through thick and thin. And that's where the safety, the claiming, that goes in. But there's no denying that's a hugely demanding task for workers and
because sometimes a part of the key challenge will be to recall that the behaviours that are presenting themselves in front of you are not necessarily concerned with actually what you're doing right there at that point in time, but actually they are, in fact, as a result of kind of previous kind of attachment experience or the kind of association with issues that are going on. So that requires a Herculean effort in terms of consistency and emotional resilience on the part of anyone who's touching the lives of children who are vulnerable, and that need to kind of continue to work hard at it.
So let's link this into it, because we had another question in relation to the live stream event tonight. It came from Robert Rooney. So Robert, thanks for your question. So just one question for the live stream. Are any of the necessary changes to caring for vulnerable children actually been implemented? There seems to be a lot that could change straight away to make things better now. So, and again, we're going to answer this in a kind of Scottish context. Probably the interesting thing about the question so actually in asking the question, Robert, are any of the necessary changes? I guess everybody will have their own view on what they think those necessary changes are. So we'll answer it from their perspective. And I guess to some extent, part of the answer to that I would link back to the review of care going on in Scotland as well. I absolutely and fervently, seriously hope that it does lead to real changes. And I guess I've got a slight nervousness or hesitancy that because over time I've been seeing any amount of reviews, any amount of recommendations, especially round about residential childcare and vulnerable children more generally. And just because we have reviews and because we have recommendations doesn't mean that things always change or kind of things always happen.
And I suppose this part goes back to a wee bit of the discussion we had certainly in our last session, last kind of opportunity for us to kind of review the course about poverty,
Yeah.
about resources, and does the resources, the recommendations may state something, but where there's a resource implication, and we know that good residential childcare, good foster care provision, good support costs money.
Yeah.
So,
and I think to some extent the answer to Robert's question lies in that unless there's a true value placed on vulnerable children and young people, and a recognition that some of the solutions and some of the responses at least require hard cash and require resources. And I mean, it's hugely depressing that since we did the first live stream event 2 weeks ago, there was more figures came out in the UK kind of suggesting that since 2010, an extra 1 million children in the UK are now living in poverty as compared to before. I mean, that's a shocking, but my view is that's a shocking, scandalous kind of state of affairs.
And a worrying trend. But just continuing with the theme of figures, I do believe that someone has been inquiring about some of the figures that we were talking about in our previous live stream.
Yeah. So, well, this wasn't in the live stream. It was. So the question here comes from Ronald James. So again, Ronald, thanks for your question. And I think it actually came from one of the kind of at the end of every week the kind of short quiz, and one of the quiz questions, and it was asking about who provides the most residential care in Scotland, and the answer was local authorities, and Ronald was asking if that was the case. Now, Ronald, if you, I'm not going to blind you with, I'm not going to blind anybody with statistics here in the live stream, but if you go to your comment, you'll see I've replied to it and I've posted a link. And so every year in Scotland, there's the social work statistics, and within that, there's statistics about looked after children by type of accommodation. So for 2017, I've got the figures here, just over 1,500 children in residential accommodation, and local authority homes is by far the biggest. It's up at 619. Now we've got other big ones there, residential schools, that's 375, and other residential 332. And I guess in that sense, if you add everything else together, then it outnumbers local authority homes, but local authority homes are by far the biggest single provider.
I think actually I've just worked out there's maybe where Ronald's kind of coming from in terms of the way that he's framed the question. So Ronald, you're going on to talk about the fact that a lot of charities are doing it. Those charities would be subcontracted by the local authorities. And in terms of the way that the statistics are reported by Scottish Government, they would still be being classed as being provided by the local authority, because it's a local authority that's then actually paying for those subcontracted bits of care. It's a bit of a technical point, but you're right to recognise the really important and valuable and huge role that the third sector and charitable sector plays, not just here in Scotland, but indeed NGOs throughout the world in providing alternate care. So that is an important point. But that's how the figures are maybe kind of throwing up more questions for you. But that's brilliant that you're interrogating them in that way. That's great.
So Ron, please go and look at my reply, and you can follow the link to it. I couldn't actually post the figures in it themselves, but I've posted the link to it. But another couple of comments that I thought would be interesting to pick up on. One from Kemi Isla-Bola. So Kemi, thanks for your comment. And Kemi was saying about how he'd found the week 4 material really interesting, and talk about this balance between the bit about rules and regulations. So it relates to the earlier comment about organisations or agencies that want to adhere to rules and regulations, and he uses the phrase cover their back, versus us being able to practice in a kind of freer way. Now, that's something that we'll speak about even more next week, but in the week 5 material. But I know it's an important, I guess it's an important issue, and a constant issue that I think everybody in caring for children kind of grapples with, in terms of that the freedom to be kind of truly kind of take risks and be experimental and give young people the best possible care experience we can, versus for some organisations, the bit what happens if something goes wrong, and if you risk assess that, and the worry being actually at times the pressure to risk assess and eliminate risk actually stops us doing things with children and young people and denies them opportunities to have good care experiences.
Absolutely, but at the heart of certainly all good teaching and learning connected to, for example, child and youth care practice or social work practice, we certainly come from in terms of a value base at Strathclyde, is about encouraging all professionals to operate from a position of being autonomous, reflective practitioners, from to be able to work within their systems, the bureaucracies, the confines, the policies, the procedures, but still be able to apply good professional judgment. And that's why we have professional courses that underpin these professions. So that's really, really important to kind of recognise and remember.
Yeah. And then there was one other comment that I was really pleased to read it, and it's from Kirsten McPhee. So Kirsten, thanks for this comment. And she said she thought the week was really interesting, and the bit that jumped out at me, I was especially encouraged by the statistics and first-hand accounts showing that vulnerable young people have a really good chance of bouncing back, and that those involved in caring for them can make a real difference. And the bit that really kind of made me smile and like this was, I hear too many times about us talking about children and it was too late, and the notion that that there's just some children and young people that we're never going to be able to help and we're never going to be able to impact on, and often those comments are more linked to older children, and if only somebody had got in sooner and it was just kind of too late, and that recognition of that it's never too late for us to make a positive difference, for us to be able to help. And
absolutely,
to hear that.
And that's operating from a position of strength and recognising that the strengths that all children and young people have, and approaching it from a kind of asset-based view of care and potential that all children and young people have. And if we don't have high expectations and goals for all of our young people, then simply they won't achieve what they are capable of. And that's certainly backed up by so much of the research, particularly Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset. So that need to have that kind of high aspiration. And, you know, for so many child and youth care workers across the globe working under very challenging circumstances, but it is about those moments where they can see their children grow and flourish and develop and make an inch of progress. And whether it's 3 steps back the way and then inching forward again, and being consistent, being in it for the long haul and having that high belief. And I think that's such an important kind of set of values to have for all professional workers.
Yeah. So
great Kirsten, point, Kirsten. Great, definitely.
Yeah, glad to see that. So let's move on some conversation around about the learning object on residential childcare, and some interesting comments here. And I've replied to a number in the thread. So let's use the next kind of 10 minutes or so to kind of bounce about some stuff here. And probably in terms of kind of me declaring my kind of starting point here. Now, I worked in residential childcare for more than 10 years before I came to the university, and do a lot of teaching on residential childcare here at the university, and on our master's programme, which draws practitioners from all over Scotland onto it. So a passionate believer and advocate of good quality residential childcare. So and I guess that's my kind of starting point. We'd never sit and argue that every young person in the care system should be in residential childcare. Of course not. The residential childcare is not the correct option for every child who needs a care intervention. And for many, it'll be kinship care. For many, it'll be foster care or residential school or other such things. But we need to be matching children in the most accurate and the best way possible to placement.
To their needs.
Yeah, to their needs.
Absolutely.
And I guess my view is that what the system has suffered for too long in a UK context is what I would call as last resortism, the thinking which is we should only be using residential childcare as a last resort, and thus what we experience is young people go from foster placement to foster placement to foster placement, and it's pursued to death, literally. And some young people can be coming into residential childcare with a whole string of placement breakdowns behind them, and thinking about the damage and harm that could have caused them, and also the foster carers who are in some instances actually almost been set up by by kind of some placement planning decisions, and then the huge difficulties which residential childcare staff can have in terms of trying to work with those children. And it links back to what you were mentioning before about kind of young people when they come in with that experience and that history. It's not surprising that they're keeping staff at arm's length. It's not surprising that they're not very willing or open to engage in a meaningful relationship, because you can almost imagine they've been accustomed to thinking, well, when's this one going to break down? When am I going to be moved on again?
I think there's an interesting point in what you're saying there about some of it maybe not being necessarily connected even to the setting. So taking the setting out of it and looking at the kind of the skills and aptitude and interest of the person that's the caregiver. So being kin care, foster carer, residential worker. And I suppose in that rich mix, you will have good foster carers who are absolutely brilliant. You maybe be some that are not matched the same way. You'll have great residential workers, and you'll have individual pockets of poor practice, whatever, regardless of what the setting is.
And in the same way that happens in schools, that happens in universities, it happens in shops that we go into, it happens in every sphere of employment.
Would never happen in a university.
We're going to have
you're absolutely right. Yeah,
we're going to have some kind of workers who have better moments than others, but that ultimately that we need residential childcare being used in a positive, purposeful way. And I guess as I found some of the comments in the thread kind of quite interesting. I'm going to start with Elizabeth Day, because I kind of passionately agree with what Elizabeth was saying, and I think from your comment, Elizabeth, I think you're possibly a foster kid. Well, you said we foster kids who could not fit in with the family life and were eventually moved on after several tries with different families to residential care, and they're now thriving. And it's that kind of recognition that for different young people at different points in their life, there'll be different best options. And it's not to say that the residential childcare is necessarily the best option in a child's life for the whole of their childhood, but for a period in time, that might be the best option for them. And we know that a lot of the research that has been carried out with children and young people who've experienced both foster care and residential care, sometimes children will tell us that they find residential care an easier environment to settle into. And some of that can be about kind of almost like feelings of guilt about living with another family and about the emotional issues that can involve in terms of being seen to be rejecting their own parents, whereas a residential unit can somehow be a bit more kind of neutral in that sense for some of them. For the other children, it might be a bit more about the kind of the space that is offered, as opposed to being, because typically I guess a family home would be smaller and more intense in some ways.
So for some, I suppose, children who can't kind of cope in the kind of busyness where there's maybe 4, 5, 6 children, being able more to settle into a kind of foster home, it just shows the complexity of variables that go on in a child's life, and about what their requirements and needs are, and how just that one, I suppose, size just doesn't fit all.
Absolutely. So I think what I would argue really strongly against is that we should never, if going back into the situation of we should only be using residential childcare as a last resort, doesn't help anybody. It certainly doesn't help the children and young people that end up in residential childcare. It doesn't help the workers that work in there.
The morale of the profession, I suppose. If you're always, I suppose, working in a setting where you think it's maybe undervalued and has a kind of negative perception that's maybe not based on fact or knowledge about what works in terms of best practice.
But we need to be using residential childcare, and we need to be using it in a purposeful way, and we need to be setting the sector up properly. So picking up on a comment from Janelle Burgoyne-Scutts, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly there, Janelle. The very first part of your comment, as you'll have picked up, is the bit that I would have a different take on. You say it leads me to conclude that residential childcare is rightly the last resort for vulnerable as young people. I would take a different tack to it. I would say that I don't think we should be thinking of last resort. What you're going to talk about is a situation that you've experienced about a residential childcare unit. I think in Australia, and I'm saying that from one of your other posts where you mentioned Australia, so if I'm getting that wrong, I'm sorry, but it sounds like what you're describing there is a unit being set up in a way that I don't think is appropriate at all. And it's about not having enough staff, not having enough qualified staff, not having enough resources. So part of my argument about we should be using residential childcare as a positive choice is that we should be setting the service up, and we should be resourcing it, and we should be running it and managing it in the best possible way. And again, going back to the, we'll get any amount of research now, we'll get any amount of literature that kind of sends us lots of good messages. And likewise, Loretta McClardy. Loretta, you made a comment, you said, right, I must admit that I think residential care is not the answer. And again, I've replied to that saying, well, actually, I would take a different take on that. My experience of working in residential childcare, my experience of now working with residential childcare workers in an education setting would be that residential childcare can be the correct answer. It's not the correct answer for every child, and it's not to say that every part of the service is working effectively in that sense, and like any other service there'll be variabilities, and because Loretta also cites what she says is her experience of residential care where she doesn't think it's been working or managed in the way that it could or should be. And yes, examples of poor practice will exist as they do in every sphere of industry, as we've said. And I think our challenge is that how we consistently push standards up and improve it, so that when we are using residential childcare, and when residential childcare does exist, as in my view it has to, that we are delivering the best possible residential childcare that we can. But let's move on to another comment about a very specific bit about residential childcare, and we're back to Robert Rooney. So Robert, thanks for your other comment, and you talk about residential childcare, but you speak specifically about secure care, and I've replied to your comment. I mean, it's fair to say you don't sit in the fence here. You call it an ungodly practice, which most practitioners describe as draconian. Now I've replied to that saying, again, I've got a very different view, and I would also I would use different language to describe secure care. I guess myself is I don't like the thought of any young person having to be in a secure care setting, but I absolutely believe that in some instances is the best option, and it's what needed for a small group of young people at a particular point in their life.
Absolutely, and actually still even within a secure care setting, I'm doing some support with a secure care facility in Scotland at the moment, and what I'm seeing is hugely positive, affirming relationships that are caring between staff and young people, the same as I've seen in residential care, the same as I've seen in foster care. So I think it's about the values of the workers and how they approach it, and how they manage proportionately risk and provide a high quality of care and support.
So all the regular discussion about love, relationships, connections, being cared for, being cleaned for, equally applies in a secure care setting, and is equally achievable. So that say that I guess in a utopian world we wouldn't need secure care, but arguably in a utopian world we wouldn't need residential childcare. We certainly wouldn't need secure care, but we don't have that utopian world, and we have young people who have either can be a severe risk to themselves or can be a severe risk to others, or a combination of the both. And when that is the case, and certainly in a kind of Scottish context, the way that whole process is managed and regulated, it is very managed and very regulated. So it's not just a case of just at the drop of a hat, authorities can be deciding somebody's in secure care and then it's never reviewed again. It's completely the opposite.
And the huge efforts made when it's appropriate to reintegrate people back into the community, and how that whole process works as well. Wow. So
and that's it. And I guess this is one of the good things about this course, isn't it, Robert? Like, kind of you've got a take on it. There's been a discussion going on in the board, but I guess other people will have kind of different kind of takes on that as I would. So that's kind of part of the benefit of the being able to have these kind of conversations.
So keep your debate and opinion going in the forums. We do take the time to read them all, and it's great to see the level of engagement in the course. So keep that up, please.
And picking up on some of those themes, just some other comments that we in the last 5 minutes or so that I've pulled out. So with a comment from Elizabeth Wilson. So Elizabeth, thank you for your comments. And this is kind of thinking about themes about touch, about love, and some of the things that Jenny Malloy was talking about, and it kind of runs through a lot of what our conversation is about. And I thought Elizabeth had a really nice quote about touch and expressions of love, or just that the adult cares about them and wants to help them, are essential to children in residential care. And she goes on to say a lot of other things, but that first sentence about that essential need for children in residential childcare to know that they're claimed for, they're loved, and about the relationships being real and being meaningful. And going on from that, Gary Wood, Gary, thanks for your comment. And again, I'm going to read Gary's comment out in full. I think it's really nice. So love can be enduring in life's journey and a mainstay of relationships. However, love can also be a gift passed from one person to another over a short period of time. And I'm linking this to the earlier comment from Kirsten about that bouncing back. And even sometimes when we only encounter some children and young people for a short time, we can have a lasting impact on them. This fleeting or short experience of love can then go on to endure in the memory and actions of the person experiencing the gift. In relation to vulnerable children and young adults, even a short time experience in love and friendship can create a lasting positive impression. It may also be the first time that they experience the comfort and encouragement that love can bring. And again, I'm really linking that with Kirsten's comment about that even when only interacting with or working with children and young people for a short time within the care system, wherever we might be doing that, about to recognise that the long-lasting impact that we can have by caring for people, by interacting with them.
And we don't always know the impact. We don't even in that very briefest of encounters, but sometimes you meet a young person who you work with very briefly, 10, 15, 20 years later, and they say, you made a difference to me because you believed in me and you were there for me. And you're thinking, wow. So we need to hold on to that positive power of the transformative power of child and youth care relationships.
And then I've got another comment here from Janelle Burgoyne Scotts, and it's actually this happened before I realised it, Janelle, because I pulled out your last comment in relation to the first bit you said about the last resort of residential childcare, thinking, oh, I've got a different take on that. And then by contrast, this one I pulled out because I read it and I thought, excellent. I agree with everything that's here. And one of the things I liked about this, and it was about this kind of concept of love. And I quite regularly experience, especially in the kind of classroom situation when working with residential childcare workers, social workers, child and youth care workers, about some people having a worry about using the word love. And I'll hear kind of some people that we shouldn't be telling kids that we love them, or we shouldn't be using that language. And there's a really interesting, we could do another whole 40 minutes about there's lots of interest in, there's more and more literature about it, and certainly if you haven't done so, in week 4, the link to Laura Steckley's paper on CYCnet, What's Love Got to Do with It, make a point of reading that. I think there's lots of interesting stuff in it. I was going to say, I loved what Janelle had to say about love, and I think it cut through some of the concerns that some people have about the use of language, and what she talks about is the love of a child in her care reflects her wanting what is best for them and their growth and development. Every child does need someone who loves them to bits and accepts them, wanting only what is best for them, never causing them harm. I mean, you think about it in those terms, why wouldn't we say that we truly care for and love the children and young people that we're working with, and we want the absolute best for them? And that goes back, I guess, to my earlier point. I hate to think of children and young people coming out the care system. And at the conference I was at last week, one of the keynote speakers, Jim Anglin, was talking about speaking with somebody who'd been in the care system for 5 years, and afterwards reflecting upon it, they said, I was never given a hug in the whole 5 years I was there, and I never felt truly claimed for or loved. That just causes me, the care system shouldn't be doing that to children and young people. So Janelle, I love your comment about love there, and in terms of encouraging us to think about how we can almost reclaim the word in a sense, because it has been, to a certain extent, I think, hijacked within the whole discussion about sexual abuse and sex and safe boundaries. And it's not saying that those aren't important issues, of course they are, but let's not conflate the two.
Absolutely.
And then we got a kind of final comment here from Shannon Burns, and we've not spoken about Billy
I know
very much, but Billy's story
unfolding
is kind of rolling out, and certainly there'll be more discussion about Billy next week. We always talk about the conclusion of the story more in week 6, but a number of comments, and the one that we picked out and is pinned at the top of the page by kind of Shannon Burns, and picking up on the support of his advocacy work and the community support could be really beneficial to Billy. Obviously, still real concerns about Billy's mum, her kind of failing kind of mental health, and about where that leaves her in terms of being able to support Billy. So we'd encourage people to just keep engaging with Billy's story. There'll be quite a lot will happen in the next 2 weeks actually, and then when we come back for the final live stream, we'll be talking about the conclusion of the story and some of the issues that throws up. That's us almost at time.
Wow. So all I suppose it remains to say is keep your level of engagement up, keep participating, and just because we've got this backdrop this week, I am going to shuffle my papers like a newscaster. Thank you very much, and see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you.